Just go ahead and we'll start the meeting, call the roll, read the opening statements, and then Jeff will speak.
Okay.
You want me to call the roll?
All right. It is now 4 p.m. and time to begin the regular meeting of the City Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Jason Geary, Chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the members of the Commission are as follows: Ryan Ross, Vice Chair; Michelle Bostonellos; Susan Stewart; Cindy O'Neill; Robert Anderson; Andrew Gleiser; and from the staff, Jeff Hansen, Community Development Operations Manager; Brent Nelson, Senior Planner; Chris Madsen, Senior Planner; Ron Cuny, Zoning Enforcement Officer; Stephen Postolka, City Attorney; and Larissa Carroll, Administrative Secretary. Until further notice, no in-person public attendance will be permitted at the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. However, we do have a telephone number available if you want to call and provide information or comment on an agenda item. That phone number is 712-224-4996. We thank you for listening to this meeting to give us your added ideas and added information as we help formulate our recommendations. These items will go to City Council for action on April 27th, 2020 at 4 p.m. The procedure is such that I will introduce an item, then the staff will make a report, the petitioner and or his agent will make a presentation, then all those in favor of the petition, followed by all those opposed to the petition, and finally a rebuttal by the petitioner. After the public hearing on an item, we will then go into executive session, at which time we will formulate our recommendation. Also, at that time, no further public input is allowed, but you're invited to continue to listen if you so desire. When you wish to speak, please call 712-224-4996, and all callers shall state their name and address for the record and then provide their comment. All calls will be limited to 3 minutes so that everyone may have a chance to speak. Before we begin today's meeting, will any of the commissioner members be abstaining on any item on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will go ahead and begin our meeting. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and make a presentation about how we've changed the format?
Jason, I'm going to go ahead and call roll first.
Okay.
Jason Geary?
Yes, here.
Cindy O'Neill?
Yes, here.
Michelle Bostonellis?
Yes, here.
Andrew Gleiser?
I'm here.
Ryan Ross?
Here.
Susan Stewart?
Here.
Bob Anderson?
Here.
Thank you, guys.
This is Jeff Hansen, Community Development Operations Manager. Just want to note for the record, as well as the minutes that will show in the written documents, that all commission members are currently participating for this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting via telephone. And at this time, we'll have staff begin the presentation. As the chairperson mentioned, we have a phone set up ready for the petitioners as well as any citizens that wish to speak on the item, and staff will be opening up those calls as they come in, and will allow the commission to ask any questions of the petitioners and or the citizens that may call in. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Madsen.
The first item is a requested sign design program for the property at 520 Nebraska Street. On the presentation, you see the general area map. The property is located in green on that map. The petitioner is looking to include a number of attached signs as well as a projecting sign. The developer for the property is currently redeveloping the existing building for mixed use. That would have commercial on the first floor, I believe one tenant space on the fourth floor, and residential uses on the second through fourth floors. So it's a sign design program. Essentially, the sign design program on the next slide is kind of broken out. Essentially, it allows the commission to review the sign package and approve a number of deviations from what the code would normally allow. So in that way, it's somewhat very similar to a site plan review, however, only for signage. So in this case, it would allow for the a little bit of a change in the amount of signage, in the number of signs, the square footage totally allowed within some restrictions still. And again, on the next slide, the biggest one here would be 2A. Again, the height, area, number, and location of signs can be reviewed and determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So on the next slide, kind of goes into the projecting sign that is being requested, looking at what the code requirements are versus what the proposal is. The maximum distance from the building, the code requirement is 6 feet. The petitioner is proposing only a 4-foot separation, so they would meet that requirement. The minimum clearance over the pedestrian way is 8 feet. They're at actually 26.6 feet, so they exceed that. Minimum clearance over vehicular way is required to be 14 feet. However, this sign is not over a vehicular way, so that is not applicable to this sign. And then the last one, 1 square foot per linear foot of facade with a maximum of 24 square feet. They are proposing a 42 square foot projecting sign. They are also proposing a total of, get my paper here. Wall signage, they are proposing a total of, I believe it is 6. There's the projecting sign. 7 total wall signs on the property, one of which would be a general entrance sign to the lofts in the center of the structure. So looking at the design, the projecting sign would be on the northwest corner of the building. You can see it on the following slide, the design for that. And the slide after that would show that it is going to be illuminated. They are not sure which design, whether it's going to be somewhat of a neon type appearance or just internally illuminated. That is yet to be determined, but they are intending to illuminate the sign. The next slide does show the renderings of the projecting sign on the structure, again at that northwest corner of 6th and Nebraska Street. And then the following slide would show the location of the wall signs. Again, there would be a total of 7, 6 for each of the ground floor commercial tenant spaces, and then 1 that would be more of a entry building sign for the Bluebird lofts that would enter for the floors, the 2nd through 4th floors. And then the following slide is provided by the petitioner, is just a historic photo of the site. I'm not sure what year this is from, but showing what the signage looked like previously on the building. Again, currently the building is vacant, but the signage that was previously on the building, there were a number of projecting signs, and one maybe a little bit smaller, but there was a projecting sign on that corner as well. That is where it's being proposed today. We did receive one comment from Mid-American Energy regarding the street light on some of the renderings that show the projecting sign on the building. You can see that there is a street light almost immediately adjacent to that. In working with Mid-America and our city engineering department, Mid-America did propose a resolution to an issue. The concern was with the sign being projecting or illuminated, that would actually cause that street light to not light up at night. So Mid-America did propose actually removing that sign or removing that street light. There is a street light immediately across the street on 6th Street, and actually increasing the wattage on that one from 250 to 400 watts. Our engineering department did approve of that. So at this point, the petitioner and Mid-America Energy have to come to an agreement on how that is done, but city engineering has approved that resolution. So at this time, city staff would recommend approval of the sign design program.
For the commission, are there any questions that you have for city staff?
This is Susan Stewart. I couldn't quite
quite hear you, Chris, about the street light. We're going to put a Cobra head across the street on the corner, I guess it would be the northeast corner of 6th and Nebraska instead. Is that, instead of in front of it? I couldn't quite hear you.
Yep, there's currently a street light on the north side of the street, yeah, in the northeast corner of the intersection. They would just be increasing the wattage of that light as a fix. So they would actually remove the one that's adjacent to the building and replace it, or replace the existing one then on the north side of the street with a higher wattage light.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions for staff from the commission? Chris, this is Jason Gary. Have we had any sort of, I know the design sign program is designed to be somewhat flexible, but have we seen a downtown proposal like this since we had made the code change?
The only other one I can think of is Mardo Brewing, where we allowed the roof sign. That would have been a little bit, well, roof signs weren't allowed in that zone, but they didn't meet the square footage that would typically be allowed for a wall sign, and we did permit that sign.
Okay. I knew we made accommodations for them. I was more thinking about this being kind of a multi-tenant operation, and that you know, multiple signs for different tenants. But I didn't think we had tackled this yet. And thanks for confirming that. And then, yeah, Chris, I did struggle to hear you during parts of that presentation. I know we're essentially on a speakerphone, but on your next ones, if you can speak up a little bit, I think that could be helpful. Other questions for staff? Seeing none, is the petitioner on the line, or are they participating in the meeting today? Hello, can anybody hear me?
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Yes, I am here.
Name and address.
Yeah, name and address, please, Dan.
Dan Woodrowitz, and I work at Avery Brothers Science Company at 416 Water Street.
Okay, and was there anything that you had to offer to the conversation?
I think this is going to be a nice sign. It's not oversized. It's not too gaudy. I think it'll be a nice addition to downtown. It'll make Bluebird Flats, you know, a destination for people to come to.
Was that, and you guys, okay, I heard most of that. Is any other comments on that? Did anybody hear me?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, all right, I'm not sure. If somebody doesn't respond, I'm not sure. Okay, are there any questions from the commission to the petitioner at all?
No. I don't have any.
None here. Okay. Okay, thank you for the petitioner for participating. Now we'll open it up. Is there anybody who's called in who wants to speak in favor or against this project?
Thank you, Dan.
We're going to wait about a minute. So we'll wait about a minute to see if there's any calls. Okay, Jason?
Okay.
Okay, Jason, we're good.
Okay, it appears as though no one has called in to make any sort of comments on this item, so we will now go into executive session Do we have any discussion or a motion by any of the board members?
This is Ryan. Do we need to make any comment with respect to them making a satisfactory arrangement with Mid-American Energy as part of our motion?
We didn't make it a condition of the approval. That's something that would have to be determined between the petitioner, property owner, developer, and Mid-America before a sign plan is issued or a sign permit is issued.
Chris, did you say it does not have to be a condition?
Correct.
Okay. I'll move the item then.
I'll second it.
Was that Stewart?
O'Neill.
O'Neill, sorry. Okay, O'Neill,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes?
Boston Ellis,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gleiser.
Yes. Okay. With that, that recommendation passes on a 7-0 vote to go to the city council. Well, actually, is this one where they're approved, they don't have to go to city council unless there's an objection?
Correct. This should be the final step.
Okay, all right. Okay, that concludes this item on the agenda. Do you guys want me to introduce the next item, or do you want to introduce it, Chris?
You can introduce it.
Okay, just give me one moment, please. Next item on the agenda is agenda item 2020-0027, requested site plan approval for the property located at 4298 Sargent Road. Staff report.
Thank you. As stated, requested site plan for the property located on 4298 Sargent Road. This is an existing or currently vacant property. On the slides, you can see property shown in green on the map with the site plan overlaid. Sargent Road would be to the north, and Southern Hills Mall would be located to the south. Red Lobster would be adjacent to the west. The site plan was reviewed by the Development Review Committee at the March 26, 2020 DRC meeting and was denied because there was one deficiency on the site plan. So the petitioner is requesting for Planning and Zoning Commission review and approval of that site plan. So they are proposing a Silver Star car wash on the site. On the next slide shows the site plan in a little bit more detail. Car wash, somewhat in a north-south configuration on the site. It would access Sargent Road on the west side of the property and would locate the private access road around the mall to the south. So looking at the commercial use standards, there are a number of standards that are required for automobile washes to be met. I'm not going to go through each of those individually, but on this particular case, 6F is the one that is being requested for a deviation from it. That one would be that accessory equipment, for example, vacuum facilities called out, is set back at least 20 feet from all property lines. So on the next slide, you can see the site plan zoomed in a little bit on the east side next to that private drive that goes to Sargent Road. The vacuums are shown, maybe a little bit difficult to see in the site plan, but these black circles in a line between them, that is the actual vacuum equipment on the site. It is approximately 11 feet from the property line. The intent of that code section was to limit the sound to the adjacent property owners, whether it's commercial, residential, it's to any property line. This is somewhat of a unique case because it's actually next to a private drive. It's actually not next to another property, and it is a property. It's not next to another structure, another commercial structure, so it wouldn't really have any impact on any other building in this particular case. So that's why the petitioner is asking for the relief from the code requirement. So just an example, just a quick Google search on what these vacuums look like. We did ask during the Development Review Committee meeting if the vacuums couldn't be moved back to the end of the parking stall, then they would meet the 20 feet, but given the design of how these are shown on the site with the hoses between them, it really wasn't something that they could move. And with the tight site restrictions, they weren't really able to constrict the site any more than what they already had to meet the 11 feet that they're showing. So the next slide, just kind of showing, again, the setback is the issue, the only issue on the site that was raised at the Development Review Committee meeting, that it did not meet code. There were a couple other items that we did discuss, but it can either be reviewed prior to the building permit being issued or is outside of the review of the planning staff or the commission. But the big one is the access, the reconstruction of the shared access with Red Lobster. If you look at the site plan, you can see that the entire access from Sargent Road to that interior ring road of the mall is going to be reconstructed. The petitioner did provide us emails from the developer to Red Lobster, the local manager, stating that they were going to be reconfiguring that. They were going to leave one access open. But again, any kind of agreement that would need to be made there, that would be a private agreement outside of our review or our site plan review, that granting a building permit doesn't necessarily grant them the ability to completely close that access, that any kind of agreement there with Red Lobster to maintain access to them would have to be privately done. And then design standards, we do have a building material or building facades. We just need to verify prior to the building permit that those do meet the design standard requirements. It appears to be the same as what was approved on Hamilton and Floyd Boulevard, which both did meet the requirements. So just verifying that. And then the dumpster enclosure on the site, code does require that the materials either be masonry or match the design of the building. At this point, we don't have that information, but typically that comes in with the building permit, so we'll verify at that time. So at this point, city staff are recommending approval and open up to any questions.
Are there any questions for city staff from the commission? Chris, I did have two questions. The road between Sargent Road and the ring at the Southern Hills Mall, that road is existing there. It's always been pretty steep. Did engineering review the reconstruction of that, and is that grade going to soften so that, because there's going to be a lot more traffic coming off of both the Sargent Road and the ring at the mall because of this development?
We have to defer to the petitioner's engineer that's on the phone regarding if that's going to be softened or if that's not going to be as steep. But engineering did not have any concerns with it. Essentially, it's a shared driveway at this point. But engineering did not raise any concerns with it during our review.
Okay. And then they are going to have, is that detention pond, it looks like there's a detention pond on site. Is that going to be underground or is that going to be above ground?
That would be above ground.
Okay. Other questions for city staff?
Chris, is there another car wash going up further east on this road, down by the Plasma Center, or not?
Yes, there's another car wash that was approved through Development Review Committee.
Okay. I just wasn't sure whether this was replacing that or if we had two car washes 2 blocks apart.
Other questions for staff? Seeing none, if the petitioner or his agent is online, we'll be happy to take their comments on this item.
Brian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Brian Wells, DGR Engineering. I'm the owner's rep, 6115 Whispering Creek Drive. I think Chris explained it pretty well. I really don't have anything to add unless there's questions.
Brian, there was one question on the...
Ryan Ross here. Maybe more of a question for staff. Has the landscaping, what's the landscaping plan? All I can see on the site plan is 2 trees by the water retention pond, and are we in compliance with the requirements?
There's not a lot of parking that is adjacent to a street right-of-way with how it's laid out. But yeah, the 2 trees would meet the tree requirement for the number of parking stalls. So yeah, generally the site plan is in conformance with the landscaping plan, the landscaping ordinance.
Yeah, I'll just add that we show a note there, 50% linear distance along Sargent Road to be landscaped.
All right, thank you.
This is Jason Gary. I had asked a question of staff, and maybe you can answer it. It's always been my perception that the road between the Ring and Sargent Road on this site has always had a pretty steep drop-off on the Ring side, so it'd be the southern end of that road, and given that there's going to be more traffic going in and out of this road, is that going to be leveled off, or is that being modified at all when you guys do reconstruction?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, right now the sidewalk, I don't believe that is within ADA code along Sargent Road, and so we are flattening that approach some. We're also widening that approach, so it'll better accommodate the left turnout and the right turnout, as well as trying to get that directly across from Fairway's driveway. We have some limitations as far as how much flatter we can make that, because we still have to tie into Red Lobster's parking lot and their access aisles. But we are trying to flatten it out a little bit off of Sargent Road. The access off of the Malls Drive, that is going to be fairly similar to what it is today. Again, just because we have to tie into Red Lobster's parking lot, so we're limited there as far as what we can really do with that new drive.
And that drop-off from the Ring, like I said, I always thought that was fairly steep, but that's still within design standards and standard building codes for the drop-off.
I think I caught your question, but I'm not sure. Are you referring to the one off Sargent Road or the one off the Mall Drive, or both?
The Mall Drive has historically been pretty steep, in my opinion.
Yes, that. I'm just getting my scale out here. Yeah, it's approximately about a 10% grade coming off that road. So we're going to keep it flatter as you leave the existing east-west drive by the mall, and then it does go north or down grade at about a 10% grade.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, seeing none, we thank you for your participation. Now we will go ahead and see if there's anybody who wants to call in and either speak in favor or against this item.
We'll give it just a minute here. You're good, Jason.
Okay, it appears as though we do not have anybody calling in to speak on that item. We now will go into executive session. Is there any motion or discussion from any of the members of the board? Does any board member have a discussion or a motion on this one?
This is O'Neill. I will move the item.
Ross?
Gleiser will second.
We'll go with a Gleiser second there.
Sure.
Boston Ellis,
Yes.
Geary,
Did you say Gary?
yes.
Yes, I am in favor.
Ross,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gleiser, Gleiser,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, that site plan is recommended to the city council on a 7-0 vote. I believe this does have to go to city council for final approval since it's a site plan, correct?
Correct, this should be the final step.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is agenda item 2020-0028, requested final plat of the Dogwood addition in the 4,000 block of Military Road. Staff report.
We're going to present item 2020-0028 and 0029 together, if that's all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Brent. Oh, hold on just a second.
Ellen? And William. Bill?
We're going to present item 2020.
Bill, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, we're going to put you on speakerphone, and we're just starting the item for the Dogwood addition, okay?
Yeah, I'm watching it.
Okay?
I watched it too.
All right. Go ahead, Brent.
Commission members, Brent Nelson, Senior Planner. We have two items here that are follow-up from previous items.
Yeah.
The aerial you have in front of you shows the area of the Dogwood addition. Again, it's a 30 or so acre subdivision with an exception in the middle for an existing home. A few weeks ago, we approved a plat, the one you have in front of you or on your screen, showing 5 lots and the exception. That plat was approved at the Planning Commission, but ran into, as was rezoning of this property, but it ran into some issues at the City Council with runoff, with change in the fabric of the neighborhood and things of that nature. As a result, the applicant has requested to withdraw that previous 5-lot plat and replace it with a new one, which, although it looks like a 3-lot subdivision, again is actually a 2-lot subdivision because that one in the middle is not technically part of the plat. The Lot 1, which is the lot to the south, fronts on Military for the most part, Military Road, contains a house, 4001 Military. That's been in existence for a while, and the applicant needs to, needs to sell that lot and the house. Essentially, the remainder of that property will be Lot 2, which is about 27 acres. As a practical matter, that's being left alone at the time, although it has to be platted as part of this. It will remain for the foreseeable future as wood, timber, undeveloped. I would expect to see a development proposal back for this at some time, but not in the foreseeable future. So we would recommend, first of all, that this plat, Dogwood Addition, with the 2 lots in it, be approved. while we're going on to the next item, 2020-29, at the previous council meetings, or at the previous commission and council meetings, a rezoning from AG to suburban residential, SR, was approved. Given that the developer is now going to leave Lot 2 in its natural state, it would be his recommendation and his request and our recommendation that Lot 2 be rezoned back to ag. It's fairly unusual. We rezone things back to agriculture from a residential zone, but there have been a lot of things that have been unusual about this proposal. So staff has two recommendations. One, that the plat of Dogwood Addition as revised to show 2 lots be approved, and that the future Lot 2 be rezoned from SR back to ag in order to take care of the applicant's needs to get rid of that house, and otherwise to meet neighborhood and council concerns and leave that larger Lot 2 as it is.
Okay, do we have questions for city staff on this one?
Brent, this is Ryan. Question, and I guess if it's withdrawn, maybe it's not as important, but I don't understand why there would be concerns about the prior subdivision not being consistent with neighborhood when the lots are larger than many of the adjoining lots, and I didn't understand the runoff. Do you happen to know, I assume this was being pushed by council, do you happen to know specifically what their concerns were?
There were concerns about runoff to the northeast. There were concerns about access, which really, again, since we're got a new plat in place, really doesn't apply. There were concerns about runoff towards the northeast corner. There were also concerns about access along 30th Street. Excuse me, along 28th Street. That's the one that's on the north side of the plat. And there, for whatever reason, were also concerns about the change in the neighbor, in the character of the neighborhood. Those came up at council, and that's why the developer chose to revise the plat. I neglected to mention, we will be hearing this rezoning again. Right at the moment, we need to defer this the rezoning portion of it because we're having some legal description issues. We'll take that at May 12th, but I thought I needed to bring that in to give you some background and all the information. But right now, frankly, if we rezone, once the plat's approved, we have a much easier legal description, to be honest. Right now, we simply request, the applicant requests, staff recommends that the first plat that the plat that's on your screen now, that one be approved.
Other questions for city staff? Brent, this is Jason. I do have a question, primarily on the rezoning. I watched the city council meetings. I understand some of the concerns going on, and I understand why the petitioner wants to redo the plat. In my opinion, that's fine. It's their land. It's their issue. The key question I have is the rezoning. I know we are going to defer it, but SR seems to be actually the right call for this land, in my general opinion. Is if it were to be left SR, but we accept the new plat, would that create any sort of conflict with the land and the zoning?
Not strictly speaking. However, I believe there are some tax implications that the applicant has if he rezones it back to AG that he wouldn't have if it remains, some tax advantages that he wouldn't have if it remains zoned the way it is. But again, we're deferring that.
So his basic argument is that if it's called ag land, he gets a property tax. He's going to pay less in property tax on the land than if it's simply zoned suburban residential. Is that his belief?
That's his belief.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for staff?
This is Susan Stewart. We may have talked about this before, but that exception in the middle there's a house on there. How do they access, do they have a right-of-way through I guess that would be the lot that borders primarily on Military Road?
Yes, where the pointer is, there is a easement with about a 14-foot driveway, very steep, that goes from...
the right side?
Excuse me?
It's kind of on the right side, or I guess the east side of that lot, and that's not going to be affected by any of this, is it?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff on either of these items? Hearing none, now we will go if the petitioner or the petitioner's agent is on the line, we'd be happy to hear from them.
Hey, Alan Fagan, are you on the phone?
I'm on the phone. I can hear Brent. I can't understand anything anybody else is saying.
Alrighty, so Alan, the commission is asking for any additional details that you would like to share with the commission at this time following Brent's presentation.
No, other than I represent the owner of this property, Brad Wilson. This is Alan Fagan, the surveyor. I live in Sioux City, Iowa, and he's decided to change the 5-lot subdivision to a 2-lot subdivision so he can sell 4001, which is the existing house, and this is what everybody's recommended, and he's willing to go along with it.
Okay, are there any questions from the commission for the agent of the petitioner? Sounds like we don't have any from the commission, so we want to thank the Alan for coming on and letting us and speaking to this issue. Next on the agenda is if there's anybody who wants to speak to this item, whether in favor or in opposition, now's the time where you can go ahead and call and participate in the meeting.
Okay, Jason, we already have 2 callers. Bill is already on the line. Bill, can you name your address?
Hey, Bill, this is Jeff Hansen. Are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, if you would like to go ahead and give your name and your address and present any information you would like to the commission. They are listening to your phone call.
Okay. This is William Buckholz at 4306 Military Road. I've lived here about 50 years. I have approximately 14 acres. Not all of it is attached to my residence. But all of it is land that's totally undeveloped. And when I bought it many years ago, I bought it after I bought my house. When I bought it, it was zoned agricultural. And they changed the zoning. I had no notification, no hearing, nothing. I just noticed a few years ago that they had changed it to residential. Well, I assume this is all for tax purposes. I'm paying residential taxes on property that was agricultural when I bought it. And now these guys are trying to change this from residential to agricultural, obviously for tax reasons. What I have to say is that if they're allowed to do that, I want to do the same thing. why they should be the only ones that is allowed to have this tax advantage when I have the same situation they do. Actually, I have a different situation they do. I'm not going to build any houses on that land. It's just totally undeveloped. I use it for other purposes. Obviously for tax reasons. What I have to say is that...
Okay, is that the completion of your comments?
I don't see any reason why they should be the only ones that is allowed to...
Bill, is that the entirety of your comments?
Same situation they do. Actually, yeah, I don't have a problem with them doing this as long as I get to do it. It's just totally undeveloped.
Okay.
Mr. Buckholz, could you give me a call tomorrow when we can discuss that? I think there's always some confusion between what it's assessed, between zoning and what it's actually assessed by the assessor for. So if you,
yeah, I'm done.
So if you could give me a call, 279-6346 tomorrow morning, we can go over that.
Okay, appreciate your comments. Can we go to the person who's, the second person who's waiting on the phone?
Yep, just one moment. We'll have to get Bill.
Between zoning and what is actually assessed by the assessor for. So if I'm done. So if you could give me a call. Who's talking?
Hey, Bill, this is Jeff Hansen, City of Sioux City. Did you hear the comments from Brent in regards to making a phone call?
The guy's telling me to call him tomorrow, and I don't know who he is.
Okay, that is Brent Nelson.
Okay.
And if you call us tomorrow, we can discuss your current situation with your property and determine what is currently zoned and what needs to be done. And Brent can assist you with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Jeff Hansen, City of Sioux City.
Okay, we're getting the next caller on.
Brad?
Yes.
All right, Brad Wilson. This is the applicant, and the commission is available for any comments or questions that you may have.
I need an address.
And an address, please, Brad.
Yeah, Brad Wilson, 3725 Military Road. I'm the owner of this property. I just was calling in case there were questions for me. All I'm doing is trying to get this thing finished so I can sell the house, and since I can't develop properties without getting the Bennington Road issue resolved, I just wanted to put it back to the way it was before I started this process, back to the ag. So
does the commission have any questions for the petitioner here? This is Jason Gary. I do have one question. Have you confirmed with the Sioux City assessor for tax purposes that the zoning of the property matters when calculating out the use and the taxes on it versus ag versus residential?
Well, I'm having a hard time understanding you. Sure. I can't hear you very well.
Hey, Brad, I can repeat the question. This is Jeff Hansen. Commission member Jason Gary asked a question of you if you've spoken to the city assessor to determine what tax implications there could be if you rezone this back to AG, which was the previous zoning on the property. Have you had any discussions with the city assessor?
No, I've not had any discussions with the assessor. I just would like to put it back to AG because it's 27 acres, and since I'm not splitting it up, there's no reason for it to be SR. And I don't need any other reason to pay more taxes on it because we changed it to a residential zoning. And if I do want to change it and break it down, I'll have to come back and ask to have it rezoned then. But at this point, until something changes with Bennington Road, my ability to develop this property is impaired. There's just not a good way for me to do anything with this. So I would just like it back to the ag
zoning, and if something changes it down the road, if the city does something with the maintenance issues and drainage problems back there, then I'll come back and revisit it. But at this point, I don't see that happening for a while.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for calling in. Is there anybody else that's on the line that wants to make comments on this item?
Jason, I'm not aware of any other calls at this time.
And do we need to wait any more based on the lag for the YouTube feed?
We'll wait 1 minute from now.
Okay.
We're good, Jason.
Okay, with that, no further calls or public input on this item. We will now go into executive session. Do we have discussion or motion on the 0028, which is the final plat of the Dogwood addition?
This is O'Neill. I'll move the item. Ross Nellis, I'll second.
Okay. Anderson?
Yes.
Gleiser?
Yes.
O'Neill?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Boston Ellis? Boston Ellis?
Yes.
Geary?
Yes.
And Ross?
Your item is next.
Okay, that recommendation to approve the final plat passes on a 7-0 vote, and will go to the City Council for final approval. The next item on the agenda is 0029, the requested rezoning. We have a request from the city staff that we defer this item to what date?
May 12th.
Do we have a motion on that?
Also, this is O'Neill. I'll move the item to be moved to the May 12th meeting, or defer the item till the May 12th meeting.
Ross, second.
Second. Yeah.
Okay, Gleiser?
Yes.
O'Neill?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Boston Ellis?
Yes.
Geary?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, that item is deferred on a 7-0 motion. We'll go to the agenda item 2020-0031, requested Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the finished materials on property located at 4036 Southgate Drive. Staff report.
Thank you. As stated, requested facade design materials at 4036 Southgate Drive. The general area map shown there in green on the map. Southgate Drive would be to the west. Line Drive would be to the north there, a little ways right under the general area map header. So as stated, this is requested facade materials. The site plan was approved at the Development Review Committee meeting on April 2nd. And that site plan can be seen on the next slide. The petitioner is looking to build a new structure on the northeast corner of the property. It would be a 3-sided building, essentially used for trailer storage. Would it be open to the south onto the site, in a rather large detention pond in the east and northeast corner of the site. That approval at DRC did come with one condition, that the design standards be met. The property is zoned business park, so the design standards are required to be met in the business park zoning district. The petitioner did request the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of limited materials. The petitioner is recommending 100% corrugated metal on the 3 sides of the building that would be walled. So that'd be the west, north, and east sides of the proposed building. The next slide does have the elevations. A little hard to tell, but they are showing essentially that south facade being open again for trailer storage, and then that it's shown left, right, and mainframe, but essentially east, west, and north portions of the building would be corrugated metal. So the design standards, just kind of a quick overview, any street facing, parking lot facing, drive-through, drive lane facing would have to meet the design standards. That would be 60% decorative material. The remainder of the material could be standard. So kind of shown on this slide what those are. Decorative traditionally would be brick, architectural concrete, fiber cement siding, glass, and then your standard, what could be the remainder, 40% would be stucco, EIFS, vinyl, or pre-finished architectural metal panel. And the limited material that could only be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission would include your corrugated or ribbed metal panel. So that is what the petitioner is proposing or recommending. Approval would be the use of limited material on the building. So the next couple of slides just show a couple of examples in the area. The first would be the Siouxland Gymnastics. All of these buildings were built prior to 2015, so prior to the design standards being required, but showing they are utilizing some decorative material on the buildings of a lot of these that were approved. So the Siouxland Gymnastics, ServPro, again, both of them have kind of a knee wall. They have kind of an entryway. Obviously, doors, overhead doors, entry doors are included in that calculation for decorative material. This building on Line Drive, I don't recall at the top of my head which one this was, Interstate Battery on Line Drive just to the north of the proposed building. Again, design standards were not required at this time, but they are showing the use of some decorative material on the structures. And then the petitioner, Brad Cummings, did provide some images as well. He wanted to have included as part of the PowerPoint. The X here on the slide shows where he was standing, essentially, where these photos were taken. So the next slide would be looking to the north. Southgate Drive is not improved. It is gravel in this location, but this would be an image looking to the north. The next slide would be to the northeast. The next would be to the south, and the last would be to the east into the site. So city staff would recommend approval with the condition that the west facade on this building would have to meet design standards. So it would have to meet the 60% decorative and 40% standard material requirements. However, the north and east would be allowed to have corrugated metal under the staff recommendation. This would be consistent with the review and approvals that have been given in other industrial parks or business parks such as Northbrook, and also the 2 that have been approved in this area, including Jensen Auto and the off-the-wall building addition. So that would be consistent with those approvals. So city staff would recommend approval with that condition that the west facade meet design standards, and open up to any questions.
Any questions from the commission to the staff?
This is O'Neill. I have a question. Did you talk to the petitioner about the recommendation of 60%, and did they have a problem with it?
We did discuss it, and the petitioner decided he wanted to bring the request forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission with corrugated metal, but he was aware that our staff recommendation would be that the west facade meet the requirement.
Okay, so he doesn't want to do the 60% decorative. I just wanted to make sure.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
This is Susan Stewart. I have a question. Chris, I know this is Southgate. Is this consistent with the actions that we have taken on Northbrook Drive regarding these kinds of materials? Or if not, is there a reason why?
It would be consistent, yeah, on Northbrook, the one we have recently approved on Cunningham, and the two that we approved in this area, Jensen and Off the Wall. We did require those, any street facing to meet design standards, and then the faces that don't face a street or face the parking lot were allowed to be 100% corrugated. So this would be consistent with those recommendations and approvals.
Thank you.
Chris, this is Jason. One of the questions I had was the property that was on Dace Avenue that we recently dealt with design standards on, out in the Home Depot area. What materials were they allowed to use on that particular site? Because I drive by that on a regular basis, and I don't know if it's corrugated metal, but it looked real sharp, and I was just wondering what sort of material that was.
I think that'd be the 715 Cunningham site to the south of Home Depot.
Yes.
Yep, that was very similar to this one. They were required to meet the design standards facing Cunningham and then facing to the north and south of the entire site. So the north of the north building, the south of the south building, because those facades were visible. They used essentially the Alucobond type metal panel, the flat metal panel that's not corrugated, and they used a knee wall of brick, I believe, as well as windows to meet the design standards on those facades.
Okay, because I remember they did have to come back, and we did allow them some flexibility, but the building, and I view it as somewhat similar to this one. It's got some exposure, but it looks pretty sharp. So, anyways, I was just curious about that. Other questions for staff?
And just to elaborate, they were allowed to use corrugated on the rear and the interior facades of that particular structure as well. So similar again to what we're doing here.
Yeah, because it doesn't face the road and it doesn't face the traffic. So yeah, I understand that part. Other questions for staff? Seeing, sounds like we don't have any more questions. Do we have the petitioner or his agent on the line to speak to this issue?
Jason, this is Jeff Hansen. I do have the petitioner, Brad Cummings, on the phone. If Brad, you can introduce yourself and provide an address, please.
Okay, Brad Cummings, Orchard, Nebraska is my address. I just wanted to point out that from the pictures that I took and from the street, the view doesn't meet code 2503-183 that says direct public view from the public access. And this building's going to set nearly 300 feet off of the gravel road or the street that its property's on.
Any other comments, Brad?
No, that's really all I had.
Commission members, were you able to hear Brad's comments?
Yeah, I was able to hear him. Okay, since it sounds like most everyone was able to hear, I want to thank Brad for sharing his thoughts on this project. And now we will move to the public portion of this. If anybody wants to call and wants to express an opinion either in favor or opposed, now's the time to do it. And we'll go ahead and wait for that.
We're good to go.
Okay, appears as though we do not have anybody that's calling in to speak one way or another on this item, so we'll go ahead and end the public comments period. And now we'll move to an executive session. Do we have discussion or motion from the board? I know I have a few discussion points. Does anybody else have any discussion on this?
This is O'Neill. I do have just a couple comments on it as far as discussion. And I know this has come up before on veering away from the design standards. And I'm not usually in favor of it because I think they're in place for a reason. And I think we need to keep them in place. So I would not be in favor of this unless they went with 60% decorative material as suggested by the staff.
Cindy, this is Jason. I got a question for you. I'm looking at an aerial map of kind of this site here on my computer, and it's not so much the dirt road that's the issue as much as it's right off of South Lewis. It's off of Highway 75, and there's no buildings between 75 and where this building's located. So the front makes sense, but I guess maybe this is kind of a question for staff or an open discussion, is that should the south and the north be added because they will be visible from 75, and that's part of my question, anyways.
So, Jason, what you're saying is should they be added to have decorative material on those sides? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would assume, and the staff can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the code would allow them, the code probably required them to put, maybe I'm wrong, to put decorative material on the north and the south sides. The compromised position I think that the staff is proposing, unless I'm misunderstanding something, is that they just put it on the west, which is the side that most faces 75 and the dirt road. That's how I understand this situation. Am I right?
Jason, this is Chris. The code would only require decorative material when it's facing a right-of-way. They could be standard material when it's essentially an interior wall. So the north and the east, in this case, could be 100% standard material. So that's your stucco, your ephes type materials. So it's only the west facade that would be required to have it. And in this particular case, the south facade is open. There's no wall there, essentially. So that's where the trailers would enter the building to be parked. So that one, I would say, obviously would not be required to have it because there wouldn't be anything there to make decorative. But if it were, I mean, I think we would look at it as door entryway, so it probably would be considered decorative in how we've been interpreting the code, with entryways being listed as decorative material. But I guess back to your question, the only facade that would be required to be decorative is...
And I will just say, I was looking at this from a satellite view, so you're saying essentially the north and the southern portions really are not, they either aren't going to need it or they weren't going to be required. It was primarily just the west that's the issue.
Correct.
Okay, all right, okay. Other question, other discussion or a motion on this one?
This is Susan Stewart. This is another one of those business parks. I agree with Cindy that design standards are important, but it seems like the two areas that I'm familiar with where we have business park designations, we've just had a plethora of applications. I think we need to make some changes to the design standards because what we call business park is not a business park. That's just my comment.
Other discussions or a motion?
I do have a question on when we make a motion on this. There's two ways we could go on it. Would we make a motion as the petitioner has requested it, or would we make a motion as what the staff has recommended?
Correct. Yeah, the
It
petitioner
would make a difference in your vote. I mean, So if we would to make the motion that it be approved with the conditions, and then if that didn't pass, then when we turn around and make a motion that it, by what the petitioner wanted, I guess that'd be a question for legal or the staff.
Yeah, the petitioner is requesting to use 100% limited materials, so corrugated metal in this case. Staff's recommended conditions or recommended condition of approval is to have the west facade meet the design standards, and then the remaining two can be the corrugated and the limited material. So if that's the motion by the commission, is to follow the staff recommendation, would be to require the west facade to meet code requirements.
Okay.
This is Stephen Pistolka, City Attorney. I guess I have nothing to add on top of that, for what it's worth.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion or a motion? I'm not hearing any discussion, so someone's going to have to make a motion here.
It's Ryan Ross. So I'm going to make a motion then that we approve the item subject to the staff's recommendation that decorative material be used on the west-facing facade as recommended.
This is Boston Ellis. I'll second.
Stewart?
Aye.
Boston Ellis?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Gleiser?
Yes.
O'Neill?
Yes.
That item then passes on a 7-0 vote. So that grants the petitioner some leeway, but it still would require him to do the west facade. Chris, if I understand it correctly, if he disagrees with our position on that, he can appeal that to council, or he can accept that position and move forward with construction. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a report by the chair of Planning and Zoning at the City Council meeting. I was not in attendance due to the COVID restrictions, so I didn't watch the City Council meeting, so I leave it to staff to make a report on any items that were presented.
So we didn't have any items on Monday that just passed.
No new items or no items at all discussed?
We didn't have any for Monday.
What about, wasn't there the previous Monday?
Yes, we did have some items on the previous Monday.
There was a lot of discussion on the previous Monday about the Benson building and the vents.
And
a lot of displeasure from the mayor, wasn't there, Jeff? About those requirements and how we need to change them?
Yes, this is Jeff Hansen, Community Development Operations Manager. There was discussion at that council meeting in reference to the alley vacations on the north. It would be the east half of the east-west alley on the north side of the Benson building. The discussion centered around more of the state mechanical code, with the requirement that the ventilation systems, i.e. dryer vents, air conditioning vents, have to exhaust over private property and not public right-of-way. And so that's why we're seeing this increased request to vacate downtown alleys, because we have these reuse of the historic buildings coming forward with residential and commercial. And so the state mechanical code was the concern that it required the vacation. The council's provided us direction to go and speak with our building and housing code board to make recommendations to the state to try to change that mechanical code.
discussions or any other reports on P&Z items in front of council?
We had the Fremar Drive, the rezoning for townhouses and twin homes up there, and the final plat was approved. All readings on that, and the vacation up on Talbot Road, the unimproved half a street portion was also approved. And the Hidden View Acres, rezoning and vacation of various right-of-ways, that was approved, all 3 readings.
Okay. Okay, any other items to be brought forward by the commission or staff? I'm going to lead off. Jeff, what's the likelihood we're going to try this again for when's our next meeting? Are we meeting on the 28th?
This is Jeff Hansen. The next meeting for Planning and Zoning Commission is on April 28th. As of today, I believe we only have 2 applications, one being a site plan and one being...
It's a site plan and rezoning, and then the conditional use permit.
And a conditional use permit. So at this time, I would anticipate, unless we hear from the applicants that they would like to defer those items, we may try this same setup as we move forward. I don't think City Hall will be open by the 28th of April.
I just for my 2 cents is that if there's any way we can push this into, and maybe the commission may disagree with me, I think if we could push it closer to May 12th, if the petitioners are willing, I think we'd probably be better off. I think the meeting's gone okay. I know personally I've struggled to hear the comments from some of the people calling in. Some I could hear well, some I could hear okay. I don't know, but I guess the petitioner's decision. But if I'm thinking that by May 12th, we probably will be in better shape than we will by the 28th.
Jason, this is Ryan. I agree it's hard to hear these things. What you might want to consider is allowing them to go forward, at the next meeting. And if it turns into one that looks like it's going to be a very complex one, or one that is subject to a lot of discussion, and you don't feel like we're getting really a full and fair discussion of it, then at that point you may want to make a motion that we go ahead and defer the matter for an additional 2 weeks. Because, for instance, if it's an alley vacation, there's not a lot to discuss, and these things I don't think require a whole lot of interaction from the commission. But other matters, maybe we're not giving it full justice on something more complex. So think about that as an alternative as well.
Yeah, I was just going off of the fact that he said one of them was a rezoning and a site plan, and the other is a Board of Adjustment item. So that's, if it was just a vacation, I think I'd agree wholeheartedly with you. So I just assumed that those would be more complex. But anything else to be brought forward by the commissioner staff members? Seeing none, we need a motion on the minutes for March 24th.
This is O'Neill. I'll move the minutes.
Ross, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
With that, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Rossnell, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.